Jesus instituted the Eucharist at the Last Supper, and He is present wherever the Eucharist is celebrated and wherever His most blessed sacrament is present. Apollo 11 landed on the moon on Sunday, July 20th, 1969. Few know about the first meal eaten on the moon. Dennis Fisher reports that Buzz Aldrin, the NASA astronaut, had taken aboard the spacecraft a tiny pyx provided by his Catholic pastor. Aldrin sent a radio broadcast to Earth asking listeners to contemplate the events of the day and give thanks. Then, blacking out the broadcast for privacy, Aldrin read, "I am the vine, and you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, bears much fruit." Then silently he gave thanks for their successful journey to the moon and received Jesus in the Holy Eucharist, surrendering the moon to Jesus. Next, he descended on the moon and walked on it with Neil Armstrong. His actions remind us that in the Lord's Supper, God's children can share the life of Jesus from any place on earth and even from the moon. Jesus is truly present in the Eucharist. At the Last Supper, as He washed the feet of His disciples and as He gave them the commandment to love, He instituted the Eucharist in His intimate love to be with us always. The Last Supper, the Passion of Christ, and the Eucharist are mystically the same event. Christ is the priest and the victim in the sacrament. He makes Himself present in His entire person for us to consume in communion. The Mass is the fulfillment of the Old Testament worship. The Jewish meal, the Seder meal, was an yearly remembrance of God's redemption from bondage. It consists of 4 cups of wine. They eat unleavened bread and the unblemished lamb. A hymn is sung between the 3rd and the 4th cup. The final cup was the cup of consummation. They used hyssop to sprinkle the blood as a mark. Blood was the sign of the covenant. At Jesus' Last Supper, where the Jewish Passover meal was celebrated, something very different happens. We read in the Gospel according to St. Matthew, chapter 26, verses 26 to 28. While they were eating, Jesus took bread, said the blessing, broke it, and giving it to His disciples said, "Take and eat, this is my body." This must have been a shock for the disciples. The lamb is left out. So important, yet instead of the lamb, we have the words of Christ. He is replacing the old covenant with a new one. Then He took a cup, gave thanks, and gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which will be shed on behalf of many for the forgiveness of sins." Blood of the covenant referred to establishing the covenant between God and Israel. In Exodus 12, blood of the covenant was the blood of the lamb. At Last Supper, instead of the lamb, Jesus Himself is a sacrifice for the blood. Bread and wine is now body and blood. After cup of blessing, which is the 3rd cup, the Jews had the hymn and then the cup of consummation, which is the ending. But in the Last Supper of Jesus, they sing a hymn and they leave. The cup of consummation has not taken place at the Last Supper. It hasn't happened yet. Jesus sends them out before the most important part, the culminating act. But Jesus does speak about this 4th cup in the Garden of Gethsemane when He prays, "If this cup should pass, Father, but not my will, but yours." The 4th cup, the cup of consummation, was His death on the cross. Hanging on the cross, Jesus said, "I thirst." The soldiers give Him wine mixed with vinegar. It has also a reference to Passover because they use the same branch which is used for sprinkling the blood, the hyssop. Jesus is indicating that he is the Lamb to take away the sins of the world. John's Gospel has Pilate ordering the crucifixion at the 6th hour on the day of preparation. That is the same hour Passover lambs were sacrificed. This means that through the death of Jesus on the cross, the old covenant is fulfilled and the new covenant is established. Jesus' last words before he breathed his last was, "It is finished." The actual translation is, "It is consummated." Here on the cross, the cup of consummation has been drunk with his death. Jesus gave a new meaning to Passover. He gave a new meaning to Paschal Lamb and the cup of consummation. He gave a new meaning to the blood of the covenant by connecting Last Supper with his passion and death. Just as the covenant between God and the people was the Lamb, the new covenant has Jesus as the Lamb of God. Just as the Jews participated in the original covenant when they participated in the Seder meal, at Mass, every Christian participates in the Last Supper and the body and blood of the Lamb given to us on Mount Calvary. The celebration of the Eucharist is a participation in the Paschal mystery of Christ, the mystery of his life, death, and resurrection. It is Jesus' body that we partake in the Eucharist. This ensures us that Jesus is present wherever the Mass is celebrated and wherever his most blessed sacrament is present.